Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session of an initiative of Prabha Khaitan Foundation and Education for All Trust, supported by Sri Cement Limited. Prabha Khaitan Foundation, a non-profit trust founded by the late Dr. Prabha Khaitan, is committed to socio-cultural welfare and humanitarian causes. Through its initiative Muskaan, the foundation promotes heritage literature and culture among children and young adults nationwide. This is achieved through cultural programs, storytelling sessions, theater, dance, music, and art activities organized in collaboration with national and international associations and institutions. Today's session promises to be captivating as we delve into the rich tapestry of history and culture with Dr. Pradeep Chakravarthy. Dr. Chakravarthy, a London School of Economics and JNU graduate, holds a PhD in history, focusing on the impact of temples on medieval Tamil Nadu's socio-economic and political landscape. With over 2 decades of experience in learning and development, including roles at TVS, Cognizant, Infosys, and McKinsey, Pradeep leverages his corporate background to consult on behavior change rooted in historical insights. His mission is to illuminate present and future behavior through the lens of the past. With 9 authored books and over 200 articles, he explores Tamil Nadu's culture and demonstrates how history can enhance workplace performance. Pradeep has shared his expertise on platforms like Netflix's Raja Rasoi, the Discovery Channel, and TEDx. Recently, he established Anantya in the Village, a heritage hotel in Alvar Tirunagari, where he conducts heritage immersion tours for children. Let's embark on this fascinating exploration together and discover the wonders of our heritage through engaging narratives, interactive activities, and meaningful discussions. Welcome, Dr. Chakravarthy, and let's make this session of Muskaan a memorable and enriching experience for everyone. Over to you, Dr. Chakravarthy.
Thank you very much. Namaskar. I'm really happy and honored to do this. I would have loved to have come and done this in all your schools. And my hope is, I do travel a lot across India anyway, but my hope is that if this goes well, hopefully I'll come and meet some of your children as well. But I'm going to try and make my talk as short as possible and allow children to ask a lot of questions. And I've got a few interesting things to show as well. And hopefully that will be interesting. So, when I was a child growing up in my school, a lot of people came and spoke. And I thought the ones who just went on and on and on and spoke were very boring. And I don't want my session to be like that. And the only way we can make it interesting is if all of you ask questions. I'm gonna put Kathy on the spot a little bit, but 1 or 2 of the best questions that I get will get a copy of my book for free today, right? So I'm going to decide who's asking that best question, and and it's going to be the best questions will be one which think more deeply about what I say and will try and make a connection between the past and the present and the future. That's all I'm going to say at this point in time, but the rest you'll have to trust me and leave it to me. So that being said, I'm going to start this presentation. Let me just share the screen in a bit and put this on. Can everybody see my slide? Can I just get a thumbs up if you can? Thank you very much. So I'm sure all of you study history in school. I'm curious to ask, so this is a question that I'm going to ask. You can either unmute your mic and respond, or you can type it on the chat. Kathy, I'm not able to see the chat window at this point in time. So if you can tell me the response, that'll be good. All of you study history in school, I'm sure. Have you ever wondered why it's called history? Why is it not called her story or their story? Why is it only history? Because we study not just men, right? We don't just study boys or men. We study other things. So why is it history and not her story or their story? I'd love to hear somebody tell me why it's his story and not her story. Kush, somebody has raised, maybe that word means something. Well said. Yeah. It's because they're saying hi story. That's a good one. I like that. That's a creative answer. Well, whoever said, I think it's Avneet, maybe the word means something else. Absolutely. His story doesn't have anything to do with a boy or a man. It's actually from the Greek word historia. And historia is about asking questions. Now, why is it important to ask questions? It's important to ask questions because only then do we know something new, or we even know whether we don't know something or we don't know it the right way. And the more we know about different things, the more likely it will be that we don't make mistakes. And the more we don't make so many mistakes, the more successful are, and then we get whatever we want. Either it could be respect, it could be affection, it could be, power and position and money, whatever it is. But the more and more we do a lot of mistakes, the more and more we go away from all of this. And the more and more we don't make mistakes, the more and more we go towards this. And one excellent way to prevent ourselves from making mistakes is to ask a lot of questions. And that's really what history is about. So I studied in an ICSE syllabus school. The syllabus wasn't something that I really liked because there was a lot of mugging up that I needed to know on, who fought whom and what date. And I lived in Chennai and Madras, and I had to study about the Mughals who lived in a very, very far, far away Delhi. And I learned nothing about my own city. And I felt very sad about it, but I wanted to do something about it even then. But what helped me even when I read about the Mughals or about other parts of India and the world was very, very often we tend to make the mistakes that people have made in the past. And if we stop making those mistakes, if we look at the past also by asking questions, then the past becomes very relevant for our present and certainly relevant for our future as well. But this happened because my exposure to history was very, very different from a lot of other people's exposure to history. And this is a photo. Can somebody point out where I am on this photograph? Any guesses on where I am on this photograph?
Sir, maybe on the left?
No, I'm not that on the left. I'm this chubby little boy right in the front.
Yes, sir.
I had a lot more hair at that time, and my cheeks were a little bit more chubby at that time. This was taken when I was probably about a year or year and a half old. Now, I'm showing you this photograph because this is me over here, and that's my mom on the back, and that's her parents at the back. So these are my grandparents. Now, you can't see this photo over here, but my mom is hiding that. But this man here is this man's father. So that makes him my great-grandfather. And then on the back over here, the fans cut his face off a little bit. But this man seated on a chair is this man's father. So he is my great-great-grandfather. And these two people on either side are this man's parents, which means they're my great-great-great-grandparents. And this house that I spent my summer vacations in has been in our family for 6 generations. The house itself is about 10,000 square feet. Most of our apartments will be just the size of the hall alone. So there used to be huge hall. There used to be about, you can see these prints and paintings on the back. There used to be almost 300 of these arranged like this all around the hall. 10,000 square feet house, which has been in our family for 6 generations. And this is where I spent my summer vacations in. And in the afternoons, and this is in a village called Tirunelveli or Palangotai. Tirunelveli, there's not much to do in those days in the 1980s. No TV, no phone, no AC. A lot of the times, current will go away, so you'll have to live without the fan even. But one thing that I had that I truly enjoyed about this Tirunelveli home was the upstairs. So the house looks very, very ordinary from the outside. In fact, there used to be an identical house to this on the other side, and there was a secret passage that connected both the houses. All that was gone by the time I was born, though you could see a little bit of the secret passage. The upstairs looks very, very simple, but it was a treasure trove. So you can see it was a huge room, and the ceiling was about 30 feet high. The walls are about 6 feet thick. So I don't think some of you will actually, I think all of you will be less than 5 feet high. The walls were taller than you, I mean, thicker than you in a way. Now it's all very cleaned up. But in those days, when I was growing up in the 80s, this was all filled with stuff. In our family, in the 6 generations, there was one rule, which was a very different rule from your houses, I'm sure, or certainly even from my house today. If something was broken, we never threw it outside. We took it and put it upstairs. So there would be broken furniture, vessels, textbooks, notebooks, all sorts of things. There was one of my ancestors. He was a great sadhu, or he had entertained a great sadhu. And that sadhu had to sit on a deer skin. So there was even a deer skin on the top, all these kind of things. Can anybody guess what this was used for? This is above one of the door frames in the house, in the upstairs. Can anybody guess what this is?
Sir, is it a pulley?
It's a pulley. Yes, you're right. But this was used for something called a pankha.
Sir, I guess it's used as a pankha.
That's right. So the rope will pass through this. That man will be sitting on this side of the room. It will go all the way to the top. Can you see this rod over there? So from that rod was this huge embroidered cloth panel. And as this man would pull it from this side, it would move inside and people could sleep in the night. So here, all of this is bare now. But when I was growing up, this was all filled with another 2-3 rows of photos and paintings and all those kind of things. It was a really, really big house. Now,
Sir?
in our houses, yeah.
Sir, so was it a manual fan?
It was a manual fan, and this was used in the 1900s and 1910s. Okay. So now I'm going to continue. Wait. Okay. I'm going to continue now. So you note down your question. Don't put it on the chat because I'm not going to see the chat. But you note down your question. And when I finish, then I want you to ask the question. Okay. So in our homes, in your school library, in our homes, we'll see books arranged like this. But in our house, because there were so many books that belonged to so many people, our books were arranged like this. And each of these cupboards were about 6 feet high and 5 feet across. So they were massive cupboards, much, much bigger than most of the cupboards that you would see. And they were about 5 or 6 cupboards like this, full of books like this. And these books could be, and you remember in those days, 6 generations I'm talking, no, in those days, people had lots of children. They had 6 children, 10 children, and each of them had 4 or 5 children. So you can imagine the number of books that were available, some of them in languages that I didn't even understand. Now, when I was growing up, and I was probably about in 5th class or 6th class, I remember one of these books, I took it outside, and it was really brown. The paper was so brittle that if you touched it, the paper will just break away. And that book was the maths notebook of some ancestor of mine. It was a really long name, Kirnattam Parthasarathi Venkatachari Iyengar. It was a really long name. I couldn't make any sense out of that name. It said second form or something like that. It didn't even say 5th class or 6th class. So I didn't even understand what this form was. But it was this boy's maths notebook. And when I opened that maths notebook, the ink started very dark and then slowly it became lighter. So what that boy was using was a quill pen, not even the usual pen that we use today, not a roller point pen. He was using a quill pen. So the ink will dry out and then he'll dip it in ink again, and very neat handwriting. And I remember one page very, very clearly. That boy had written, "I hate maths." And he'd underlined that 3 times and he'd drawn a little oval around it. And that image, unfortunately, I can't show you that picture because I can't find that book anymore. But that picture gave me a sense of very different sense of history. The book, the handwriting, the paper quality, the math, the notes that he'd written, everything was so different from my life. But that sentiment of not liking history was so similar to mine. And suddenly I noticed in my own family, in my own family's history, here was this boy who was connected, related to me in some way. He and I had nothing in common except that we were boys. But the feeling of not liking something was very similar. And I learned that you can learn history in terms of who fought with whom in what battle. That's one way to learn history, and you need to do that to pass your exams. But you can also look at how human beings fundamentally feel the same way across ages. Whether it is 1,000 years ago, whether it is today, whether it is tomorrow. Heck, even in this call, I'm much older than you, but the way I feel will be the same the way you feel. Anger, sadness, wanting respect, wanting love and affection. These feelings, these needs we have as human beings don't change. And if we can look at history from this aspect, then history becomes very, very relevant for our lives. And that's how I got interested in history. So today's story is about this book that I've written. It's called A Children's History, A History of South India for Children. This is available by Hachette. But I'm not going to talk to you about the book. You can buy the book on Amazon, read it. I'm going to talk to you about 5 stories that I never knew about South India, which I learned because of this book. And there will be some 17 photos, and I've got one question which you have to answer, and then you're going to ask me questions as well. I'm going to try and do all the 5 stories. We may not have time for that, but I certainly want to give time for Q&A, and I also want to show you some of these things. So we'll see how many stories we can do. Yeah. So this is a very, very dry place. It's a place called Aditya Nallur, which is in the Thoothukudi district of Tamil Nadu, which is deep down south Tamil Nadu. You can see a little bit of the Western Ghat mountains in the back. You can see a lot of sand, and the water here is a Tambraparni river, which is one of our oldest and most important rivers in South India. It's a very, very dry place. You can see it's quite boring to look at. But in this place, about 100 years ago, they found this tiny metal image. Now, this metal image, easily you and I, if we got some plasticine or some Play-Doh, we can create something. In fact, we can probably do something better than this. But why is this image so important? When I was a child and I used to go to the museum, there were parts of the museum called the anthropology section where there'll be all these broken pots and, from prehistoric times. And I used to feel really bored about it because you look at these broken pots and say, okay, yeah, so what, big deal. But writing this book taught me how important these kind of objects are. Now, this tiny object is made out of a metal alloy called bronze. Now, if that person, and this is at least about 3,000 years old, some people say it may be older. So if that person knew how to make this metal alloy out of bronze, which is a combination of copper and tin, what are the subjects that person should have studied in school? Take a guess. Let's open the chat window, or you can tell me.
Sir, may I say
Hey, somebody said science. Hang on, you have to be more specific. It can't be just science. What subject?
Sir, chemistry.
Metallurgy.
Yes, why chemistry?
Sir, because you have to mix 2 things. Mixing.
Very good. So, which means you need to know the boiling points of both copper and tin. What is the other science that you need to know?
Metallurgy.
No. In your school, what other science subject do you study which looks at states of matter?
Physics.
Exactly. You need to know physics because metal is a solid and then it's melted into a liquid. So you need to know physics. What is another subject that you need to know to make the furnace?
Chemistry.
No.
Bio.
Not bio.
Metallurgy.
No. Math. You need to know math. What specifically in math do you need to know to create that furnace? Okay, I have a request. Everybody mute your phone, mute your mic. Only when you are speaking, you should open your mic, okay? Otherwise, I'm hearing a lot of noise in the back. I'm not able to focus. Thank you. So in maths, what subject do you need to make that furnace which will keep that wax mold, the clay, and then they pour the hot metal and the wax melts and the metal image is created?
Geometry.
Exactly. In those days, it may not look like a big thing, but you need to know physics, you need to know chemistry, you need to know math, and you need to know geometry, and you certainly need a little bit of art. You also missed out an important subject, which is communication. You need to be able to communicate to 2-3 people to do this, and you certainly need to know geography, because inside geography is another subject called geology, and geology will tell you where to get the copper from, where to get the tin from, how do you get it? It will be found in pieces of rocks. How do you convert that copper from rock into metal that can be used to create this? And the mystery in this is copper and tin are not found here. They're not found in South India at all. They're found only in places like in Western India, like Gujarat, Rajasthan, that area, or they're found in Sri Lanka. Tin is not even found here. It's found only in Malaysia, even today. So in those days, 3,000 years ago in Aditya Nallur, even though you see something like this, which is really tiny, it's only about this big. You might think, hey, come on, I can do something like this. But if you look at this carefully, there's so much more that we can learn. And people at that time, they didn't even know how to write, but they knew all of these subjects even at that point of time, much, much more than we are able to know all of these today in school. And in Adichanallur, this is Adichanallur over here on the map. So many Roman coins were found because in those days, today, all the best stuff for us comes from Europe and US, right? You want the best quality phone, it's either Samsung or Apple. It's both of them not made in India. Best kind of cars we buy from abroad. Some of you or your parents might buy some really fancy clothes and bags and things like that. They also come from abroad. Today, unfortunately, for luxury goods, we go abroad. But 3,000 years ago, for luxury goods, they came to India. Watch any movie. Some of you may be studying Julius Caesar. I saw when you played the national anthem, I saw a picture of Shakespeare. Shakespeare's famous play Julius Caesar, right? Julius Caesar is a story where if you see this on film, Romans, when they're wearing that white color toga, there'll be a blue border at the corner. That indigo dye came from India. The pearls that the women wore came from India. The food that they ate, they could not eat that food without something that came from India. Any guesses on what that is? It's a really, really important thing that goes into food, especially non-veg. Who's put something on chat? Kathy, you'll have to help me with the chat. Spices, yeah, what spice specifically? Pepper. Pepper was the spice. The whole of trade in the ancient world was just on pepper. Little bit of cardamom and nutmeg, but mostly pepper. And the cups that they used, they had ivory handles. And for all of this, they were paying us in gold. We didn't want anything else. We wanted gold only. Even sometimes we bought some wine from them. Sometimes we bought glass from them. We didn't make glass. Romans made glass. So we bought these. But there were Roman kings who said, we must stop trade with India because the Indians are bleeding us of our gold. But despite that, people in Rome loved our stuff so much that again and again they came here and they bought all of this. And so today, the places that I'm sure your schools are organizing heritage trips for you to go to different places, museums, everything. Today, those places may look really boring. But if you read up a little bit more, you will find that even for these boring looking objects, prehistoric objects in the museums, they will tell you so much more if you look at them carefully. If you go to prehistoric sites or some old temple, it may be very dusty, hot. There may be nothing interesting there to look at. But if you dig a little deeper into history, you'll find that maybe not today, but one point in time, there'd have been really, really important places. So this is something that I learned from the book, that just by looking at something, not a good idea to make a judgment, but better to go through history, look at the hidden history of this object and see how great it was. This is a picture from a temple which shows the Arab traders. So you can see all these Arab traders, they're bringing big boxes full of gold coins. They're also bringing camels. They're bringing horses. We bought a lot of horses from them. And then they took back a lot of elephants. So this trader is using an oar from a boat and he's pushing the elephant across, and they want the elephant to take back to the ship. So you can't see this very well over here, but there's actually a ship over there. This is one of our ancient sculptures which show how much of trade we were doing with the Arabs and Europe at that point of time. This is from a temple called Thirukurungudi. I hope one day I can take some of you there because it's a temple which has some outstanding sculptures. Yeah. Can I have everybody on mute unless you have to ask a question? Somebody is still not on mute. So the next story is, what is this?
This is mustard.
Bajra.
So it's a bowl, but what is inside the bowl?
Or rice. Bajra.
This is not bajra. This is ragi. Ragi is a millet that we eat very commonly in the south, especially in Karnataka. And this is what? Most of you should know this.
Rice.
So,
Rice.
there was this is rice. So now today everybody tends to eat mostly rice. No, today most of us tend to eat rice. But in those days, many of the farmers tended to eat ragi. Now, some people will look down on this and say, hey, only poor people eat ragi. I'm not going to eat ragi. Yeah? So there was always this kind of a conflict between people, yeah, saying, oh, you've got a better car, you're better, like this. This conflict was always there. So there was a person called Kanakadasa who wrote something called the Ramacharite. And in the Ramacharite, the story is different, but in the Ramacharite, Kanakadasa introduces a poem. And in the poem, he talks about how rice and ragi, they have a fight with each other about who's better. So rice says, of course, I'm better because all the rich people eat me. When you go to a wedding, when they're blessing the people, they throw something called akshate. Akshate, I don't know whether you have this in your weddings, but akshate is rice that's mixed with a little turmeric or haldi, and then they throw it on other people as an ashirwad kind of a thing. Yeah. So rice says, this is rice only they use for akshate, so I'm the greatest person. But ragi says, no, listen, even wealthy people, when there's a mother who's expecting a child, or somebody is sick, they've just come back from COVID or some fever, they need to eat ragi because ragi is more healthy, it's more nutritious. Also, you may be talking about rice being the best, but the farmer who grows the rice, he doesn't eat rice himself. He eats only ragi because ragi is what gives him a lot of health. So in these kind of, I'm seeing this like a story, but in those days when they dance this with music, it'll be very humorous, but it'll also make a deeper point that when it comes to living life with other people, it's not one thing is better than the other. Everything is equally important for us. So it's like, it's very silly to say, rice is better, ragi is better, because it's like saying blue is better than gray. Both are colors. They're both beautiful in their own ways, right? And that's the point. And consistently, you'll see, I've just given you one story from food. If you look at crime and punishment, if you look at laws and legal systems, if you look at how farmers, music and dance, everywhere you will find the deeper story is people will be different. They may be different in terms of appearance, in terms of likes and dislikes, in terms of religion, in terms of subjects that they like, in terms of everything, in terms of the kind of technology that they like. You like Samsung, I like iPhone, whatever. People are different. But at the end of the day, if we need to be successful, we need to bring people together, work together. Yes, it is different because people have strong differences. But rather than focusing on the differences, we should focus on why each person is equally important for the society. And we should also focus on how some things are similar. And you will find consistently across music, dance, literature, everywhere you will find this, differences are there, but we need to work together. And I remember as I was writing this, one person who was, I didn't know a little bit about ragi and also I had some doubts. He said, even when we make a sweet dish, we add a little bit of salt because that's what enhances the flavor. And even when we make a pickle, we add a little bit of jaggery because that enhances flavor. So like that, we need all the flavors in the world. We need all different kinds of people in the world. Yes, there will be differences of opinion. People will fight a little bit, but beyond that fighting, how can we look at how we can work together? So this was another story that I learned from the book. One of the stories, how many of you have read Tenali Rama? Yeah, many of you have read Tenali Rama, right? So there is a chance. So many people say that Birbal, Okay, so go back on mute if you've spoken. Many people have read Birbal. There is a very strong belief that Birbal may have never existed. The stories may have actually been copied from Tenali Raman. But Tenali Raman himself, there was somebody called Rama of Tenali, okay? But was he the person who would constantly, give innovative ways to tell the king that he has made a mistake? There is actually no historical proof. But whether I tell you this or not, you will love Tenali Rama, you will believe in Tenali Rama. The reason that he has survived for so long is because somewhere he gave hope. Tenali was, in the stories, he is not educated. He was not a rich person. And yet, he was trusted by the king. And somewhere the story is, don't look down on people who are not educated or who are not rich, because they may also have a talent, number one. And number two, the story lesson also is, that even if you're uneducated, even if you don't study well, even if you don't have enough money, if you are able to make people smile, if you're able to say something to help them without wounding their ego, you will still be successful. Which is why such a great king like Krishnadevaraya, there is only one book that is attributed to Rama of Tenali. It's a very serious book. None of the stories are, or the travelers who met Krishnadevaraya talk about Tenali Rama and these stories. None of them do that. But these stories have survived even till today because they give hope. And they are also, in a way, like the Ragi rice lesson, they are also, in a way, humorously telling you, don't differentiate or don't judge people because of their education and their money, which is why these stories have survived. So whether Tenali Rama lived or not is something that we can never prove or disprove. But it's very likely that those stories survived because they gave people a lot of hope. And they were a lesson to tell us, don't judge people by their education and by the money that they have. And this is another lesson that I learned from this book. And when Krishnadevara was in power and Tenali Rama stories are said, Vijayanagara kingdom was the largest city in the world. People came from across the world to see Vijayanagara. And we have so much of information about the daily life of the king, what he ate, how the festivals were celebrated, how people were punished, all of this information that we have. And if you read the life of Krishnadevaraya, he woke up at 4 in the morning and he did a lot of exercise and he drank like one big vessel full of oil. So these are some of the stories that I learned. I'm going to skip through a few slides. Games. Now, do you play volleyball in school?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
Yes, sir.
today, okay, so many times in history, we don't hear a lot about women. But in Jain stories, especially in Karnataka and in Tamil Nadu, which are from about 2000 years ago, sometimes even 2100 years ago, there are so many poems that talk about how women were very good in playing with balls. And this is a little metal ball here. It's called an ammane. Very rare to find this these days. It's a tiny ball, and inside this ball is another ball. So when you throw it up, it will jingle. And there's one story, it's a Jain story called Perungadai. In this Perungadai story, there's one scene of all these women playing different games with balls. And there's one girl called Kanchana Mala. So Kanchana means gold and Mala means necklace. So literally she's like a golden necklace. She throws one ball up and then she throws another ball up. The second ball hits the first ball and then they both fall down. Then she's able to hold them and juggle with them. And she throws 1,000 balls like this is what Perungadai says. I don't know whether 1,000 is the right number or not, but clearly many of the stories, poems, especially the Jain poems, talk about women being excellent players of volleyball and juggling also. And later period, we have lots of stories of how women were experts, not just in dance, but dancing with throwing flaming torches. So there'll be a stick with a lot of fire on the top. They'll throw the stick and they'll catch it, and they'll do this with 3-4 sticks. And they were also very in the dances. In Andhra Pradesh, for example, in their dances, they would also have swords, and women will fight with each other and do a dance also. So very interesting stories I learned about how not all of history is just serious stuff about battles and wars. There's a lot of fun stuff about games as well. The last story is, can you recognize this diamond? What's it called? Kohinoor. At one point of time, Kohinoor was in this tiny, small temple. So in Andhra Pradesh was a very great dynasty called the Kakatiyas. One of the great Kakatiya rulers was a queen called Rudramma. And she had a very tough time to become the queen. And when she became the queen, till she was in her 80s, she fought and she won so many battles. Very brave queen. In that dynasty, they had a temple for their goddess called Kakati, who was like a Durga. In the north, we call, or the west, east, we call her Durga. In the south, typically in Tamil Nadu and places like that, we call her Pidari. In Andhra, there was this Kakati Amman temple. And this Kohinoor was one of her eyes. It was probably the left eye. There was another diamond along with the Kohinoor in that temple called the Hope Diamond, which is a gorgeous, one of the largest blue-colored diamonds. And when the Kakatiyas were defeated by the Delhi Sultanate, they stole the image away, they stole the diamonds away, and it went to the Delhi Sultanate. And then when they were conquered by Humayun, Babar and Humayun discussed this Kohinoor diamond, and they said that this one diamond, if it is sold, it can give you enough money everybody in the world for 3 years. Finally, the Mughals were defeated by the Sikhs, and finally from the Sikhs it went to UK, and that's where the emerald, the diamond was changed, which is not what it was today. So when you see a piece of jewelry somewhere, when you see a small temple like this, there could be a lot of other stories as well. So there are many other stories like this, and I thought, what do you think? Don't you think India, well, maybe some of you are from South India, you have a connection with South India, but if we live in South India, don't you think we need to learn a little bit more about our history? What do you guys think? Don't we need to know a little bit more about the history of the place that we come?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So I also learned, what do you think is right? Should we be part of a problem or should we be part of a solution?
Part of the solution.
I agree. No, because it's
Part of the solution.
I agree. Because it's kind of boring to be with people who are always complaining, no? You don't want to be with people who are complaining all the time. I certainly didn't want to. So I said, what is the solution? I worked really hard, and this is the book that I put together. So this is all the chapters that it has. It looks at the kings and queens, which is how kings govern. There's some interesting charts there, which is applicable not just for South Indian history, but if you're studying the history of the East, West, North, in fact, of any country, of how all the kings, all the dynasties, they have a pattern. So I've talked about that. I've talked a lot about food, about how the Portuguese came into India in the South, how Kerala cuisine was influenced by them, how chilies came in at that time, how tomatoes came in much later, all of that. Wars and weapons, there's so much of information on how battles were fought. Some of them are quite gory, but that's how literature was. Crime and punishment was an interesting subject. So I learned, for example, in crime and punishment, that the biggest punishment that you could give in those days was not actually killing somebody. It was getting them to leave the community. And in Kerala, for example, the harshest punishment was that you had to go to Tamil Nadu. I am from Tamil Nadu, so I don't like that punishment so much, but I don't know why they did it, but that was one of the punishments they got. The three great ways of looking at the Hindu tradition, the Vasishtadvaita, Advaita, and Dvaita came from the south. So I've talked a lot about Shankaracharya and Ramanuja and Madhva. Islam and Christianity also came to India very early. In fact, Christianity came to India first in the south. So we've talked about that as well. I've also looked at how do you understand a temple? How, when you look at an Indian sculpture, when you look at a temple sculpture or a temple, how do you understand what is happening there? How is it happening? What is the story? All of that. Lot of information we have on traders, on what they sold, how they sold it. For example, in the days of the barter economy, one measure of rice was equal to one measure of salt. So that was like the currency that they used. Language and literature, we spoke about a little bit. Science and technology was something that I learned a lot. How did we tell time? How did we use chemistry, physics? How did we use biology, Ayurveda, medicine? All of these were lessons that I learned in terms of science and technology. Music, dance, and drama also we spoke about a little bit. So the book looks at, each of these chapters are fairly short. They're about 5-6 pages max. So you can read them in about 10-15 minutes. And I've put the information of as all the 5 southern states as possible. So I want to end this with that. And I want to show you a few things. This is, for example, what does this look like?
A rock.
It looks like a rock, no?
A rock. No.
It looks like a rock, but it's actually not a rock. This is something.
So you're on mute. Sir, is it a conch shell?
No, this is not a conch shell. It's a stone. It looks like a stone, but this is something called slag. When you see this somewhere, you immediately know that there was a very big foundry over there where they made metal objects. So I went to a place called Kodumanal, and Kodumanal it's a farmer's field now. You can't see anything, but in Roman times there was a huge foundry, and they were exporting a lot of metal items from Kodumanal, which is near Coimbatore, all the way to Arabia. And the mystery in Kodumanal is there are many, many graves. All of you have read Asterix and Obelix, right? What is Obelix famous for? What does he make? What does he make?
Menhirs.
Yeah. So we had those menhirs in South India as well. Our menhirs were flat. They were not that needle shaped like Obelix. Our menhirs were flat. In Kodumanal, in this village, there are many, many menhirs, and all of those menhirs mark graves. And inside the graves, we find a few carnelian beads. Carnelian is a red color stone, and this stone is found only in Afghanistan. Yeah, so how 3,000 years ago, how that stone came here is a mystery. Some of you are from West Bengal, yeah? Calcutta, that region, yeah? So do your parents, your mom, your mothers, or your aunts, or your grandparents, do they wear these white color bangles?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So those bangles came from South India. One of our biggest exports were those chunk bangles, those conches. They came from that Adichanallur, that site that I showed you, that tiny image, no? One of the biggest revenue generators was from those bangles. Sadly, in Tamil Nadu, we don't wear them anymore, but they still wear this in West Bengal. So you see, even in those days, 3,000 years ago, when they were very difficult to move from one place to another, India was still very connected. So that is, so something like this looks like a rock. You may not even touch it. You might just kick it with your feet, but it has so much of history. This is one. Okay. Now I want to show you these two water pots. Okay. Can you see these two? What are these called?
These are very
So vessels.
Vessels, right?
The
These are
vessels.
vessels. They're water pots. Some people call them kalash, but we call them a chumbu. In Tamil, we call them a chumbu. Now, the reason that I want to show you this is, and this is something that I learned in the Temple Seekers chapter, whenever you have to design a product, there are three things that you have to be focused on. And you will find whether this is a water pot, whether this is a sculpture, whether this is a piece of jewelry, they would have followed the same, or a lamp, they would have followed the same principles across India. So I might not know much about Bengal or Bihar or Orissa or Gujarat or Rajasthan, but those craftsmen also, when they're designing this, would have done the same thing. And that's the beauty of India, right? We didn't have internet and email and phones in those days, but these kind of concepts were across India. So when they make a water pot like this or any product, the first principle is bhogadhyam. Bhoga is to use, adhyam is to help. So the purpose for which it is used should dictate the shape and the texture and the quality of the pot. Now, because this is a water pot, you can see that the central part is the volume is high. The top is very low, because if the top is also open, then the water will splash out. So we don't want that to happen, which is why the neck is narrow, number one. Number two, the neck, sorry.
So I just wanted to ask, why is that vessel so small?
Because it's only for a little bit of water. Can you see me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So the neck is very narrow because you can hold it easier. So that is what Bogadem is, right? Should be designed to be used easily. So it's held very quickly, very easily because of the narrow neck. And the third thing, I don't know whether you can notice, is the rim is heavy. It's been actually, can you see that it's been bent back? Yeah?
Yes.
The rim has been bent back. And if you notice carefully, this part is not made out of copper, it's made out of brass. Reasons for this. The rim is and the bottom are the places that will get used the most. It will be hit the most. You keep it like this, you keep it like this. It's touching harder surfaces. So they've used a harder metal at the bottom so that the wear and tear will not affect the pot. And they've also used extra metal here to shape it to the back. Not only does that give you better grip, but it also makes the wear and tear on the top much less. So many small things, small features to make this pot much more usable. And this is the same principle you'll see in other things. So this is Bogadhyam. The second principle is Sukha Darshana. Sukha is beautiful. Sukha is pleasing. Darshana is to see. So it should be pleasing to the eye. In the ancient text, what is symmetrical is pleasing to the eye. So you'll see this side and this side are the same. There is some design on the top. It's all very symmetrical. The angle here is the same. All of these, so the length that they've used here is the same. The bottom design is also the same. It's evenly shaped at the bottom. All of these show that it's the more and more symmetrical, the more and more it is pleasing to the eye. The more and more it is asymmetrical, the less and less it is pleasing to the eye. So this is the second principle, which is Sukhadarshana. The third principle is Ramya or inner delight, which means every time you look at this water pot, you should keep asking yourself, what is something in this that I can learn about my own life? Just like I was telling you about history, right? That you can learn history about dates and numbers, but it's also about human nature doesn't change. From history, what can I learn about not repeating the same mistakes? And that's a whole question of asking questions. The deeper meaning in this is copper here and this is brass. Two very different metals, but they've come together. Just like the ragi and the rice story, differences make this look beautiful. I have not washed it, but if I wash it, this will be nice, shiny, shiny gold. This will be shiny, shiny copper. It will actually look very, very beautiful. So when I look at this, the inner meaning is, hey, this is so different as copper as a metal. This is so different with brass as a metal. But when they come together, how beautiful they look. And also, brass is a harder metal than copper, which is why they've used brass at the bottom, because any amount of wear and tear, brass will get less dented than copper. So inner delight or Ramya is, yeah, so things are different, but they're still beautiful. Number one. Number two, in this design, they've used a lot of lotus leaves, lotus petals. The lotus petal is a favorite motif for us because the lotus grows from dirt and filth. It grows above the water and it looks to the source of sun, which is the source of all energy. And every time we see a lotus, whether a goddess is holding it, whether a god is standing on it, whether your parents or grandparents are drawing it on the floor, sometimes your teachers or somebody might be wearing a cloth which has a lotus petal. Every time you see a lotus, we are supposed to remember through Ramya that, hey, every time around us, people are going to say nasty things. They're going to discourage us. We should go beyond that and get that sense of energy to do that, to bring that flower and that blossom into the lives of other people. And the lotus is a metaphor for how there must be a lot of negativity around us, but it's our responsibility to go up from that negativity, look at what gives us energy and do that. So in a simple water pot, Bhogadyam, which is, it should fulfill the purpose for which it is made. Sukhadarshana, it should look pleasing to the eye, which means it should be symmetrical. Ramya is, it should cause inner delight. It should make me ask questions about what can I learn from this water pot for my own life. And this is the water pot that you see now. And this is, I feel really sad today that today you'll just look at this as a water pot. But people like me who've seen so many of these, I can tell you this is from Tamil Nadu. And I can tell you this water pot is from Karnataka. In the Karnataka, the designs are different. The way they mix the metals are also different. The principles are the same. Okay, brass and copper. Here also brass and copper. Here also brass and copper. But the way they've done it is so different. You see, Tamil Nadu is so different. Karnataka is so different. Now you go to Rajasthan, you go to Kashmir, you go to Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Bengal, wherever you go, the water pots will be the same. Because those craftsmen would have also used the same three principles. This is the second. The third that I want to show, I have two more things. This is, what does this look like?
Throne.
What is this?
The throne?
No. What is this here? Inside there's some space.
Tank or
So water tank.
Who uses for Deepavali?
Satya?
That's right. This is a diya, right? You put the oil in here and then you light the lamp over here. Now this is diya. Why have they given this hole in the back here?
To pour the oil.
No, the oil goes here, no?
So for the oil to drain out?
No, that it shouldn't drain out, no, because if the oil drains out. No, wait, guys, think about Bhogadyam. It should be easy for the person to use it.
Sir, to insert. Sir, to insert.
To provide
Hold it like this, no? There is a container, there is a hole here and there's a container at the bottom. Now think about chemistry.
right?
No, think about chemistry and physics.
To hold it.
No, hold it, yeah, but hold it. This is why you have this.
So that maybe if we
so that it does not get.
Float on water.
No. So this is okay. Let me give you a clue. The oil goes here and the lamp is lit here. Okay. So this part will become very hot. Now, if I have to hold it like this, will it be easy or difficult?
So difficult.
Yeah.
Difficult.
If you put water in the back, what is different between what is the tendency of water and heat?
Water cools heat.
Water conducts heat a little slower. So, because the water is at the bottom, the metal at the top and the bottom become cooler. Therefore, I can hold this diya even when the diya is lit. So if you see a man who probably never studied chemistry and physics in school, he was able to so ingeniously create something. And imagine how difficult this is to do. He'd have made a wax model like this, covered it with clay, put that, and this is not even copper, this is not even bronze. This is copper, tin, and a little bit of some other metals as well. That hot metal will melt the copper, will melt the wax. He'll break the mold and then he'll make this. So all of this was made as one wax mold and then created. And the beauty is somebody like this who was so clever, they didn't even sign their name. We don't even know who made it because they were so focused on doing a good job rather than getting a good name. And that's, I think, a huge thing that we need to respect our craftsmen. Okay, so this one. The last thing that I'm going to show you is from Kerala, very rare. So it's like it's got a holder here. It's got these two cups. You can open the cup. And what is this?
You use in puja.
No, this is not used for
Something. That for keeping spices.
To serve.
This is for something that
To serve.
This is to help you for something that you should do at least once a day, if not 2 times a day.
Drinking water.
Food and prayers. No, it's something that I'm sure it's connected with water. Yeah.
It's a brush.
Drinking water.
Close, not brush, but it's close to that. It's to have a bath.
Kettle.
It's to have a bath. When you have a bath, this cup was for shika, which is what they used to use instead of shampoo. This was for paitama, which is besan. Besan in Hindi, you know, in the old days, that used to be the soap. And so that your wet hands shouldn't touch it, they used a spoon for this. And so that you don't lose the spoon, they put that spoon in a chain and they connected it with the holder itself. So, and the sad thing is, I don't even know what this is called in Malayalam. So much of our knowledge we've left out because we don't ask our grandparents and great-grandparents for these stories. I don't know the name in Malayalam. If any of you are from Kerala, you know people from Kerala, ask them and I'm sure they will know the name for this. So I call it a bath accessory, but that's English. There must have been a name. So these are some of the stories that I learned when I wrote the book. Now I'm done and I'd love to take some questions.
Sir, do you know how to speak the language Tamil?
Yes, very much. That's my mother tongue.
So why Rome and why there was a trade, usually a trade with Roman Empire, and how did they trade it, and how did they found the Indian Empire?
So we don't know how Romans figured out to come to India and trade, but they loved our stuff. Whether it was conch bangles that are very popular in Eastern India today, pepper, cloth, turmeric, nutmeg, cardamoms, everything. They really loved what we had. In fact, there's a place called Venice in Rome, which is very famous for, Michelangelo sculptures, all that. A lot of that money actually came because of the trade with India. And today, this 1, 2, 3 that we use, they're all numbers that went from here to Arabia and from Arabia to Europe. So the Romans really loved our stuff, and they were willing to come all the way here and do trade with us.
So what inspired you to learn history even in South India? Because as you told us that in South India they taught us about North India. What did you think that we can learn history about South India too?
Yeah, because I said, look, I have to learn something about my own place, right? And because I had this lovely exposure to history in my grandparents' place. So during the lockdown, I started doing these calls for a lot of children like you. Many kids joined, they really liked it. And one of the children told me, Uncle, why didn't you write a book out of this? Because after us, who else is going to listen to these calls? Because lockdown is not going to happen again. So that's how I wrote the book. And this is the thing, right? I mean, you can always say, oh, the syllabus should change and all of that. But there are some things that you can't change and some things you can change. I thought I should study this myself. I really enjoyed it, and I've written a book about it. And hopefully you'll read the book and you'll learn something as well. And what I'd really like is, I'm guessing many of you are not from South India, which is fine. Now take this example, look at learning your own mother tongue well and going and doing a book like this about your part of the country. Because if you don't write about your history, who else will? All right, we've got more questions up.
Sir, is your family an ancient part in history?
Nah, they didn't. But I'm just lucky that I know 6 generations of my family.
Because your house was filled with artifacts and ancient stuff.
That is because my great grandfather, he lived for only 48 years or 49 years and he died. But in that time, he was a really successful lawyer in Tirunelveli. And he was the one who made all that money. And sadly, after him, everybody sat at home. Nobody did any good work. They all ate that money up and then now we don't have much money. Yeah.
And are you only interested in Indian history or have you studied history from other places?
I have studied world history as well. I like Russian history a lot. But now I want to study more of Indian history and certainly a little bit more of, I come from Tamil Nadu, so I want to do a lot more for Tamil Nadu history. And I take a lot of students to my homestay and then we look at local history, local agriculture, environment, all of that. So I don't think I'll look at more of South Indian history, not so much other countries.
So what are the steps we can take to learn about South Indian history and then later spread it?
Okay, so well, you can start with reading my book. Then there are some, if you start learning another language from South India, or if you can learn Sanskrit, that will really help you. There are a lot of other websites and links and things that I've given in the book here and there, and there's enough available online. And it'll be nice if you come and see all these places at some point in time. I'm sure your parents take you on holidays once in a while. So try and do all of these things. That'll help.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I have one question. Sir, did you get the things you showed us? Did you get these yourself? Like you explored different places, and did you collect these objects yourself?
Okay. Some of these I bought from people. Many of these, and that stone, for example, I collected, but the rest were all things that I bought from different people.
Okay, sir.
I needed to ask you things like you told that Vijayanagar was the largest kind of empire. So where was that located and why was that the largest empire? Sir, why was that the largest empire?
That was the largest empire because that time we were doing so much of trade with the rest of the world. Vijayanagar Empire conquered all of South India at that point of time. And because Hampi was the largest city, there were so many business people there and people from Portugal and everywhere they wanted to come. So for those of you who are interested in more learning about that, all of those accounts of what Vijayanagar were like are all published in English. They're all available online. Just go and search for Hampi and there are a couple of names of the travelers which are in my book. And you can read about all the details of how life was like in Hampi and Vijayanagar at that time.
Sir, I have one question.
Yes.
Sir, I was asking that Tamil Nadu and the South India is filled of temples and there are many attractive designs of the temples. So I was saying that there are many states in South India like Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh Kerala and Tamil Nadu, but their languages are different, their dance forms are different, their designs are different, everything is different. Why is that?
Yeah, because each place they allowed art and craft to develop in their own way. Now, suppose you go for art class and suppose your teacher says, of course, your teacher will say, all of you should draw a horse today. But suppose he forces you to draw the horse only that way, that's not fun, no? In maths, chemistry, and physics, there's always only one right answer, right? In science, there's always one right answer. But in the arts, there are many ways to look at it. And I think in those days, they allowed for that many ways to look at it. And each person wanted to do it differently, but they followed these same rules. Yeah. Bogadhyam, Sukadarshanam, and Ramya. They followed the same rules, but you can still be very, very clear. And you're talking about Tamil Nadu as one state, but even within Tamil Nadu, if you come one day, I'll show you there are 4 or 5 different styles within Tamil Nadu. And I don't know which state you come from, but you can look at that, maybe not so much with temples in the north, in the west, and the east, but you can look at that with textiles, right? If you look at Bengal or you look at Madhya Pradesh, every region will have different textiles, different food.
Bengal only.
You're from Bengal. So even your temples are very different. What you see in and around Murshidabad, very different from what you see in other parts. So you see, it's there everywhere. And I'd love for you at some point in time to go, and I don't know Bengali. I'd love for you to go read up on Bengali and look at how you can do a similar history of Bengal. It's very sad that we don't have a proper history book on Bengal in English. I'm sure we have this in Bengali, but people like me can't read it. That'd be lovely for you to do something like this. Yeah.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
There's a question. It is not exactly related to history of South India, but it's related to history in general.
Sure.
So right now only told us how we can learn all these different things from history. Sir, how does dates in history, sir, how are they relevant?
Oh, I know that's a difficult question. Yeah. What's your name? Avishi, right?
Yes, sir.
Hey, that's a difficult question, Avishi. You just, unfortunately, the way the syllabus is and the exam is, you just have to mug up the date. Okay. It's a pain. I didn't like doing it, but you just have to do it. But I mean, let's face it. Yeah. At the end of the day, in every part of our life, we will have to do some things that we don't like, but do them well. Okay. And as an adult, you'll have to do much more of those. As a kid, you have to do much less. Maybe this is one of those. So just take a few deep breaths, just mug up those dates and vomit them in the exam. And it's good training for you to discipline your mind to do things that you don't like, but to do them well, which is a good skill to have any job that you take when you go up. But it's
hi sir. Sorry to interrupt, because being a teacher here, I would say that dates are important, of course, because when we talk about the context, we need any context that we are taking up, we have to know that what dates are we in. But when we talk about lifestyle, when we talk about, say, the lifestyle, the culture of the people, then I think the dates would not really not make that much of sense, because we cannot give a date to everything.
You can't. And sometimes, I mean, you just need to remember the dates because it sets you in the context of time also. How old it was and how things have changed after that.
Exactly.
Or how things have not changed also.
Exactly.
Fair point. Absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, I feel for you, sometimes I didn't like memorizing my dates in school.
Yeah, but then, of course, we can always tell children that dates are important when we talk about the context.
I agree. Absolutely. So children, you have to remember dates. It is important to remember dates, but there is more to history than just the dates.
Excuse me, sir.
Is there a fair way to answer that, ma'am?
Yeah.
All right.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Yeah.
So why as we see that South India is usually the most powerful, so we see why South India is really powerful.
No, every place is powerful in its own way. I've just written this book, so I know a little bit more. If you wrote West or East India or North India, I'm sure you'll find equally powerful people.
Okay.
Yeah, but maybe you're looking at power in a different way. Think about it and ask me the question again.
Excuse me, sir.
Excuse me, sir. So, like in the olden times, the invaders which used to come, they generally attacked the wealthy temples, which I read in this session. So, sir, do you think it was important to keep it personally at your place? So, like in the olden times, people used to keep their treasures of coins. So, wasn't it important to keep these artifacts also? Like Nader Shah, who attacked Delhi in 1739, he took the peacock throne and many things as well. So wasn't it important to make it to keep it a bit more secured?
I think it is, but I don't think we expected an invasion of that sort. And let's be honest, yeah, all these South India kings, everybody was fighting with everybody all the time. Okay. But what was different was the wealth never left the region. It continued to be in the region. And when kings attacked another kingdom, they attacked the palace treasury, but not the temple treasury. The temple jewelry, the temple wealth was the common man's wealth that they had largely left away. But for the first time, we had somebody like Nader Shah who basically said, and remember, it was usually one Hindu king fighting with another. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And those days, and it was sometimes it gets even more confusing because you would have a Hindu king, but the wife would be a Jain. So it's not, you can't look at it in the way we look at religion today. It was much more flexible in those days. This Nader Shah was the first time when the wealth was taken out of the region, number one. And number two, for the first time, people were told that what they were doing in their religion was wrong and it was shameful. Sir. And it may not be an important thing for many people today, but in those days, religion was a very important part of that person's identity. Yes, therefore, there was a lot of confusion. But that being said, look, there is always going to be ways in which things that you don't expect will happen. And you have to be as aware of it as possible. And you should also look at how the Cholas, for example, when the Pandyas defeated them completely.
Yes, sir.
And I've done this little drawing in one of the chapters, in the Kings and Queens chapters, where successive kings, if they stop governing their region properly, if they stop paying their army, if they if they are not good warriors themselves, then they tend to start becoming lazy. And 2-3 kings are lazy, then somebody else who's more powerful takes up. And you'll find the story everywhere else, right?
Sir, this also happened with Mughals.
Yeah, so why were the Ahoms? I was just going to say that. Why were the Ahoms able to defeat the Mughals? Why was Shivaji able to defeat the Mughals? Because, I believe that for the Mughal army to decide whether they should take the left road or the right road, it'll take them one day to decide. Okay, but somebody like Lachit Borphu Khan in Assam or somebody like Shivaji in Maharashtra, they were able to do this in a far faster way and they were able to change faster. So I think the lesson is also, if we think nothing will change, if we don't change ourselves as we move along, it will become difficult. And you'll see this in your own life, right? When you move from 8th class to 9th class, what is expected out of you will change a lot. When you move from 10th to 11th, it'll be a huge change. And then 12th to college, right? Every time you're also going through a lot of change. So I'm just saying it's a lesson from history that we need to learn, that we have to be open to change and we need to be vigilant about change. But good question, Adyan. Kathy, we should give Adyan a book.
Yes, we all got carried away with such an interesting and captivating discussion. The children, kudos to the children, really, for asking such questions. And it shows really that they were so very interested. That's really wonderful. So I'm sorry, we need to bring this to a close since we've exceeded time already. And I'm sure there are many questions that children may want to ask, so you can put it in the chat box. And so thank you so very much, Dr. Chakravarthy, for sharing your insights on the importance of cultural history and making it relatable to children. Your expertise and dedication to promoting heritage literature and culture are truly commendable. I would also like to thank our supporters, Shree Cement Limited and Education for All Trust. Last but not the least, I would like to thank our young listeners. Without their enthusiasm, this session would not have been successful. So stay well, stay safe, everybody. Have a great weekend. Goodbye for now. Thank you so much again, Dr. Chakravarthy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.